Thank you. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the meeting of the South Planning Committee here today at Shropshire. We are not expecting a fire drill. In the event of the alarm sounding, please leave the building and gather in the front of the building. I am obliged to inform you that this meeting is being live streamed and recorded. Could I also ask you to please make sure your mobile phones are switched off. In order that those watching and live stream know who is speaking, could members of officers introduce themselves prior to speaking? To ensure members of this committee and all points raised by the public speakers are properly heard, I must advise you I will not tolerate any disruptive behaviour. This is a meeting held in public and not a public meeting, and if such behaviour persists or takes place, I will adjourn the meeting. I shall now ask members of the committee and officers to introduce themselves. Mark, would you want to introduce yourself, please?
Mark Williams, Councillor for Highley.
Thank you.
Roger Evans, Councillor for the London Division.
Councillor Hilary Love, Councillor for Church Stretton and Craven Arms.
Councillor Christian Lee, Councillor for Bridge North East and Astley Others.
Councillor Caroline Bagnall, representing Broseley.
And Councillor Tony Parsons, representing Basins, Mill, Colham and Swan.
Nigel Lumby, Councillor for Albrighton.
Andy Boddington, Councillor for Ludlow North.
Louise Prince, Solicitor.
Claire Wild, Councillor for the Severn Valley.
Nick Hignett, Councillor for Ray Valley Ward. Kelvin Hall, Principal Planner.
David Evans, representing Craven Arms and Church Stretton, and also chair this committee.
Graham French, Principal Planner.
Kim Brown, Solicitor.
Okay, thank you. Your apologies for absence. Apologies have been received from Nigel Harting, Councillor Nigel Harting, and he's substituted by Councillor Mark Williams. Councillor Heather Kidd has given an apology, and she's substituted by Councillor Roger Evans. And Councillor Richard Marshall has again sent his apologies, and he is substituted by Councillor Claire Wild. Before we go through any other on the agenda, I will take a comfort break after item 6, which is the solar panel farm at Ludlow. Have we any public questions, please?
No public questions, Chair.
Okay. We've got the minutes of the last meeting held on the 23rd of August. Could I have a proposal for the minutes, please? Thank you, Councillor Parsons, Councillor Lee. Thank you. All those in favour, please? Thank you. 2 members, right. Disclosure of pecuniary interest, please. Councillor Boddington.
Thank you, Chair. It's not quite pecuniary, but I'll leave the room for item 5, which is the Town Green application, as Councillor Tracy Huffer and I were involved in the negotiations proposing and getting the Town Green through.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Boddington. Any other pecuniary interest? Yep. Councillor Lumley, please.
As the ward councillor, I'll be leaving after I've said my piece in relation to item 8.
Okay, that's fine. Any others? No? Okay. We go on to item number 5, which is land registry at Sydney Road at Charlton Rise, Ludlow. And I believe, Louise, you are presenting this?
I am, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay.
Members, this is an application that's been received by the Council as Commons Registration Authority from Connexus Homes Limited. It's in relation to an application to register land at Sydney Road and Charlton Rise, Ludlow as a town green. The application has been made under section 15.8 of the Commons Act 2006. 15.8 deals with applications that are made by the landowner of the land rather than the community, the wider community. And as such, there's 2 legal tests that need to be satisfied. The first of these is that the applicant is in fact the owner of the land, and that any relevant consents from leaseholders or chargees over the land have been sought. Myself and Tim Collard are satisfied on the evidence that's been provided by the applicant that they are in fact the owner of the land, and they've also provided relevant evidence to support the fact that they don't need to obtain any relevant consents. As it's made under section 15.8, provided those 2 tests are satisfied, the council must register the land as a town and village green,
and therefore the recommendation is that that is done.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, anybody wish to speak on this, please? From the chair, I propose that we go ahead with the recommendation. Thank you. Do you have a seconder for that, please? Thank you. All in favour? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. We now go to item number 6, solar farm at east of Squirrel Lane, Leppich, Ludlow. Graham, please.
Thank you, Chair. So this application is for a solar farm with a capacity of up to 12 megawatts, equivalent of 1,250 homes on land east of Squirrel Lane. We visited the site earlier today. The proposal includes solar panels, security fencing, CCTV, internal access track, underground cabling, inverters, substations, grid connection, and also environmental enhancements. We saw that areas around the site have been identified for biodiversity habitats. Construction will take up to 6 months. Site would have an operational life of up to 40 years, after which it would be decommissioned and agricultural land would be reinstated. It would consist of a series of photovoltaic arrays with a maximum height of 3 metres, limited to 2.1 metres to the southwestern part of the site, which is nearest to the residential properties at Lettich. So the site would be contained by 2-metre deer fence with a security system on 3-metre poles. There would be an underground grid connection laid alongside a public right-of-way route to the south. Construction would be subject to a construction management plan, which would control vehicle dispatch to the site. We noticed it was quite narrow coming in this morning, but the route that they will be taking is coming in from the opposite direction from the Clebury Road. So all delivery vehicles would arrive from Clebury Road. There would be a 1.5 hectare biodiversity enhancement wildflower meadow. The applicant is proposing a community liaison group, which will help to identify any issues during the construction phase. Whilst not forming an integral part of the application, the applicant's also committed to provide a community benefit fund for use by the local community. So the proposed 28.5 hectare site is 2.5 kilometres east of Ludlow town centre and about 1.2 kilometres east of the A49 bypass. Thanks. Yeah. And the nearest residential property adjoins the proposed habitat area and is 120 metres to the south of the arrays. And the small settlement of Ledditch, which we drove through this morning, or Lettich, I think, is located 330 metres south. Bitterley Parish Council have objected. They consider supporting information to be insufficient, including with respect to ecology, construction, traffic and visual impact. There's a very detailed comments that are made in Appendix 2 at the back of the reports, which I refer you to. There's concern that the site might not be properly managed. There are 10 public objections that were received, and their main concerns are similar to those of the Parish Council. Additionally, we've had the CPRE writing, and they've copied their objection to members, so I won't sort of go through those in detail, but again, similar to the Parish Council, loss of agricultural land, etc. The applicant has responded to these, and that response is included in the update sheet. So no objections from other statutory consultees, including with respect to highways, ecology, drainage, trees, heritage and public protection. The Council's Climate Change Task Force has written in support of the proposal and cites the ability to help mitigate the effects of climate change. The Shropshire Council declared a climate emergency in 2019 and subsequently adopted a climate strategy and action plan in 2020 with a vision for Shropshire to become carbon neutral by 2030. March's Local Enterprise Partnership has a vision for local renewable energy to meet 50% of local demand by 2030. Their recent modelling suggests that this would require an additional 120 large solar farms in the LEP area if alternative sources such as wind cannot be delivered. So the Shropshire Climate Action Partnership has identified a need for around additional 5,000 installed megawatts of generating capacity if the whole county is to become self-sufficient in renewable energy. However, the electricity grid in Shropshire is heavily constrained, meaning that opportunities to obtain a grid connection to allow power to be exported are very limited, which therefore significantly restricts where solar farms can be located. The applicant undertook a detailed mapping exercise in order to identify the proposed sites, which was deemed to be one of very few locations which meet all relevant criteria, including proximity to the available grid connection, which we saw is to the southwest of the site on our trip this morning. In line with government practice guidance on renewable energy, policy DP26 of the emerging Shropshire local plan, amongst other matters, encourages the use of lower rather than higher quality agricultural land for large-scale solar installations. Policy also promotes continued agricultural use and biodiversity improvements. An agricultural survey notes that 95% of land within the application site is of grade 3A quality, the lowest division of best and most versatile. However, the survey advises that the land suffers from wetness due to the soil type and that land drains have failed to rectify this. It's further stated that removing this land from arable production will free up capacity, allowing other land within this large estate to be farmed more efficiently. Proposed use is reversible, and there's no evidence the proposal will result in significant or permanent loss of agricultural land or productivity. Sheep grazing would occur between the arrays during the operational period. Regarding objectors' concerns about the loss of arable land, the effect on food production associated with that, Solar Energy UK advises that solar farms currently account for 0.08% of total UK land use. Government targets for a five-fold increase in solar under National Energy Strategy 22 would result in 0.3% of land area being used instead by solar, which is equivalent to around half of the space used nationally by golf courses. This does not suggest that solar park development would be likely to materially affect national levels of food production. An LBIA concludes that the proposals would not adversely affect the AONB over 2 kilometres away or more pristine rural landscapes beyond the edge of Ludlow. Council's landscape advisor confirms support for the methodology of the LBIA and conclusions. A heritage assessment finds no or negligible heritage impacts. Construction management plan would control the construction phase with traffic using the approach from the A4117 at Clebury Road, avoiding therefore the Ledwidge Bridge, which we went over this morning. Highways haven't objected. An ecological assessment finds no adverse ecological impacts and quantifies the level of biodiversity gain which the proposals would deliver. The report finds no evidence of potential impacts to leisure tourism and cites survey evidence suggesting that solar installations do not discourage tourist visitors. So in conclusion, the proposals would provide valuable locally produced renewable energy whilst helping to address the effects of climate change in accordance with national and local policies and strategies relating to climate change and renewable energy. Detailed surveys which support the application don't identify any issues, and this is clarified generally by the comments of technical consultees. Whilst the concerns of locals and the parish council are noted, any concerns would need to be significant in order to overturn the NPPF advice, which indicates in paragraph section 158 that production of renewable energy is a material consideration which should be given significant weight, and that sustainable development proposals which accord with the development plan should be approved without delay. It's considered, Chair, that the application can be supported subject to the recommended condition. If we can just move on to the slides very quickly. So the next slide shows the layout of the site. We'll see that the bulk of the black area there is 3 metre arrays. There are some 2.1 metre arrays in the pink area, and beyond that in the green there is the biodiversity habitat area, the principal habitat area separating the site from the settlement of Ledwidge. You see the hooked area down the south, that is the grid connection which is below ground. You see the point at the top of it, that is the access point we came in on. There's a single distributor track in the middle of the site which aligns with the hedgerow which we saw this morning, and to the immediate southeast of that we have the ancillary equipment. So we have the inverters, 3 of those in the middle, and we have a switch room at the bottom next to that. We'll just move very quickly on. I have a few slides which show the general visual context of the site, which just refreshed members of our trip this morning. don't need to dwell too long on these. That's the site access at the top, within the site at the sort of middle. Next one, please. There's about 5 of them. So we're seeing slightly longer distance views from elevated positions. We see in the third one down that the site is shown from an elevated position to the east towards the A1B. It does tend to indicate that it's well screened by a peripheral edge of woodland, and that it forms a relatively small portion of the overall landscape when seen from that perspective. Next, please. So again, we see more of the same, this time from a more elevated position at the top of Clee Hill. Again, with the land prevalently sloping in a southerly direction and intervening vegetation, we're sort of getting the conclusion from the LVIA that there is a generally well contained site. Next, please. Yeah, this is looking from the edge of Ludlow, I believe. It's I mean, these are more local views basically, but I think that it highlights the fact that very careful work has gone in the visual analysis of this site. And I think that members can probably draw comfort from the fact that the council's retained landscape consultant has validated the methodology and the conclusions of this report. I think there may just be another couple of them. I won't comment on them, but if we could just run through them, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you very much. Right, we have 3 speakers on this one. First speaker is Kathleen Wheeler from the Parish Council of Bitterley. Would you like to come and address the committee, please? That's the right hand switch on the microphone.
Thank you. I'm Catherine Wheeler, speaking on behalf of the Parish.
Okay, you have 3 minutes, thank you.
Leisure Solar Farm is the second solar application in Bitterley Parish, and since the first one at Henley was built, much has changed. Shropshire Council declared a climate emergency in 2019 and so emerged the Shropshire Climate Action Partnership. The heart of this policy is the goal to build 500 acres or 202 hectares of renewables per annum the next 8 years. We have identified 3 important issues we would like you to consider with this application. Firstly, the AONB. Government policy to protect against large-scale industrial development within a short distance of the Shropshire Hills AONB is currently inadequate. It seems national planning guidelines to conserve this landscape can easily be overruled, and there is nothing to protect it. This development at Ledditch is 1.8 kilometres from the AONB at the nearest point and is in clear view, particularly from Farden. Secondly, cumulative development. 10.5 hectares of existing solar farm at Henley, 21 hectares with this application at Ledditch, and an application in process at Rock Farm at 49 hectares totals, 80 hectares of solar farms just outside Ludlow, with little space between them. With a continued incremental approach such as this, a large area around Ludlow could soon be covered in solar panels. An area currently renowned for its unspoilt, natural scenery and rich historic environment. Thirdly, we believe there is emergent government policy to prevent the building of solar farms on best most versatile land. The land at Ledditch is 95% best most versatile land. It produces over 10 tonnes of wheat per hectare. Removing fertile arable land from food production for 40 years must surely be avoided. If SCAP goals are to be met, the council needs to find 1,619 hectares of suitable land over 8 years. This could mean losing over 16,000 tonnes of food crops every year if land of similar quality is used. In conclusion, the Shropshire Local Plan and SAMDEV urgently need updating to meet the challenges of where and how to build this new large-scale solar farm development. We would like the Planning Committee to defer this application until such policies are set which allow responsible decisions, encouraging the building of solar panels on rooftops, brownfield sites and less valuable farming land wherever possible. Ledditch Solar Farm is one of the first, should not set a precedent which will allow large-scale industrial solar developments to be built on good quality, productive farming land in outstanding, naturally beautiful parts of Shropshire County. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for Kathleen, please? No? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I now have the local member, Richard Hopper. And you've got 5 minutes, Richard, to address the committee, please.
Sorry. Thank you, committee.
I hope you all enjoyed your site visit to South Shropshire today. It's slightly cold, but it's called bitterly for a reason, I guess. Much of what I'll say today will apply to both applications in my division, so I apologise if I repeat myself. I believe that this is one of the most important planning meetings that you will sit on. You're not discussing a particular elevation of a building or a one-off build. The two applications are the starting point for a new trench solar farms coming forward in Shropshire, which could extend to 500 acres a year, year on year. The impact is considerable. I think all people support solar, and if not, they should. We have been in an energy crisis for years, and now exacerbated by the war in Ukraine, which is adding to the rising food prices and the cost of living. I need to say no more. No parish council could have worked harder than my own parish council in Bitterley, in proactive manner in support of solar and renewable energy, by engaging with landowners, tenant farmers and the agent from the beginning, and in full view of the fact that another application is coming forward next door, and the community effect that this will have. On a personal note, I have baled straw on these fields in this application numerous times, and I can fully aware of its cropping potential, but I will leave the land classification to members. The parish council have worked out a sensible set of conditions and gave way on other issues, such as screw piling against conventional piling due to its costs, so I hope officers will take that into account. I am of the opinion that Shropshire Council's policies on solar farms are outdated and no longer fit for purpose. And we welcome new guidance from emerging policies through SANDEF. I am also concerned that committee members have received little or no training relating to solar. I will continue to support renewables and solar, but based on sound policies from central government, from local government. The decisions made today will have ramifications and set the benchmark for all following in Shropshire. I see no justification for excessive on the food production, food production security by taking arable land out of production, by trying to reach targets in our designated climate emergency, which I fully support. These changes in our climate are already having an impact on the ability to produce sufficient combinable crops and food production in general. Land, water are both precious resources, and they are not making any more. The latter we have been without for the last 2 months. This the wife will call a crisis. Not being able to bath, flush a loo. I may call it an issue as I'm a farmer. But it's only when you don't have, you have it that you fully appreciate it. Just like power. For this reason, I believe we are not going to reach our targets. We need also to be looking at inland wind power. Renewable energy in all combinations is crucial, but applications have to be considered carefully and based on sound, robust policy.
Thank you, Richard. Any questions, Richard, please? No? Thank you very much. Thank you. And now calling Ewan Hutchison, please. And you're the agent. And you have 3 minutes to address the committee, sir, please. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chair, members of the committee. Thank you for allowing us to come and talk to you this afternoon. My name is Ewan Hutchison. I'm Associate Director of Planning at Local Gen Consulting. And we are the planning agents for this application and here today represent the applicant, Let It Show Limited. We've worked hard as a team with development partners, landowners, officers from across the council, consultees and a variety of environmental experts. We've all reviewed and rigorously examined this proposal. We have proactively engaged with the local community, in this case the Parish Council at Bitterley, as you've heard, and residents in the Ledwich area. In doing so, valid issues have been raised, we've listened to these comments, we've learned how our site sits within this community, and we've responded accordingly. We've made several amendments to the layout of the project, as the officer alluded to in his presentation, and included a variety of measures not only to mitigate the effects of this development, but also to enhance the local environment. Your planning officer's report concludes that on balance and with the inclusion of these measures, this application should be approved and has attached conditions to ensure that this is delivered in an acceptable manner. Looking beyond planning, as we've heard, we are here today amidst an international energy crisis. So more than ever, we need locally produced renewable energy. As a council, you have declared your own climate emergency, and the council's own climate change team have commented at length in support of this application. These words are important and welcome and should be commended. However, these commitments need to be backed up by practical implementable actions. For solar projects, proximity to grid is the key. The site has secured an agreed point of connection in the adjoining field, as you've seen, and close to the Ludlow substation, so the benefits can be delivered close to source. Developing this 50-acre site will directly help to diversify the agricultural use, income and food production on this farm over the next 40 years, and whilst also producing renewable energy. It's not an either or. Agricultural land will not be lost. Instead, it will be used for grazing sheep, allowing the soil to recover naturally from arable production. After 40 years, if the need arises, the land can go back to arable production. Chair and members of the committee, I would put it to you today that this project is of the right scale and in the right location to make a positive and meaningful contribution to the renewable energy requirements of the area. In doing so, it can help to meet the council's own targets for net zero in a way which is respectful of the environment, the people and the agricultural industry in this part of Shropshire. With that in mind, I would commend your officers for having produced a fair and balanced assessment of this application and support the recommendation for approval. I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you.
Any questions, please, for Ewan? Councillor Boddington.
Thank you. On the plan in front of us, you can see the connector that goes south of the solar farm, and that's undergrounded.
Yes.
Where it gets to the kink in the footpath that sort of goes from Lettich across to Canaan Camp, it connects with an overhead wire. Now, what is that connection? Is it just a straightforward wire that goes up at a diagonal, or is it going to be a lattice tower like some other solar farms?
It's not a lattice tower. Basically, the connection will loop through our connection and back onto the wire, as I understand. And the existing wire runs then into the substation at Ludlow.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Anybody else any questions? No. Thank you very much, sir. Okay. Right, Councillor Wild, please.
Okay. Right. Thank you very much, Chair. I agree with a lot of what Councillor Huffer has said. I think all of us here understand the climate emergency and what we have to do. But I also think that we're in danger of bad knee-jerk reaction to all this. Agricultural land is there's a finite amount of it. This land is 3A. So basically you could grow potatoes, wheat, barley. I mean, they talk about yields of 10 tonne of wheat per acre. That's good land. And I know the government are looking into this, and I would take issue with what Mr. French said, because actually in the NPPF paragraph 174B, it stipulates in there that grade 1, 2 and 3A is best to agricultural land and actually shouldn't be used. So Councillor Huffer is right. We, I think, as a committee, need to make a stand now, because whatever we do now will affect all the ones that are to come. And if we say that, although the NPPF says grade 3A is good agricultural land, if we then dismiss that, then every other application that comes on 3A land will have no alternative but to pass. I have to say, there is a lot of grade 4 and 5 land. It's quite right, you can graze it, but then, grade 4 and 5 agricultural land, you usually grow hay or grey sheep. So it'd be no different, really. So that's what we ought to be looking at. And we ought to be looking at other places to put the solar panels. But not so long ago, the country was self-sufficient. Now, we only produce 50% of our food. And I know they throw all sorts of things at you, like, solar will only count for 2% of the land, but that's 2% of all the land in the country. That's misleading. So actually, if you look at what land we're putting solar on, and then you work out how much arable land we're taking out of production, and what percentage effect that will have on our food supply, then it puts a whole different perspective on this. So I think, whilst there's a policy, I think there's a new policy in the local plan. Is it DP26? It's not yet been examined. But I do think it is today will be such an important thing moving forward. And we have to decide whether we're going to just use best agricultural land and import the wheat or the barley or the potatoes for the next 40 years. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Bollington, please.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with points made by Councillor Wilde. There is an issue here, but I think this application is a bit in the balance, and I think it's fairly complicated. I didn't go on the site visits this morning, but I live in this area, and it is my hill walking territory, or was till I got my leg condition. And myself and my colleague know almost every footpath going. And I spent yesterday afternoon ploughing around, almost literally in the rain, looking at various viewpoints to refresh my memory. I'm concerned about the views from some locations. And here I disagree a bit with the LVIA approach. It is standard methodology, I'm not criticising that. But when you descend on the Shropshire Way, so if you're behind the church, up above the church at Nobury, you come over a hill and you come down and you've got this great vista before you. It is the nature of eyes that you see mechanical things in the landscape. You can see the current solar farm, and that's very clear. And you come to Nobury Church, just beside it, you cross the lane, and then you've got a period of about, 150 metres, I'd say, where this site and the existing solar farm are in very clear views. That's cumulative, and they're both together. And the existing solar farm, which actually is naturally quite well screened, is very visible because you're so high. As you then descend, now this is from memory, but it's also, this is backed up by the LVIA, but as you descend, these areas come in and out of view as you go. And they do fix in your eyes. because you're not really looking at that sort of landscape when you're walking the Shropshire Way. So I do think there's quite significant landscape impacts, and that's critical because the Shropshire Way is a really important route for walking. Walking that, it's not the reason I came to Shropshire, but it's one of the ways I learnt to get to love Shropshire and decided I would move here. The other footpaths, so the one to the north, there is quite a big impact by the grain drive, the top of the image there, and by that sort of lane going off to the right. That's not really well used, so that's partly down to maintenance, and that's fairly poor. There are, again, strong views from Snitton Glade, which is off quite a way to the right of that image. They're there too. So I think we need to take that into account. Councillor Wilde has talked about soil quality. Now, I've lived in Ludlow for 12 or 13 years, and this has always been my walking route. And it's always grown a healthy crop. Now, I'm not a farmer, but it's always had wheat on it or a similar crop on it. And it's always been healthy. If there are troubles, a lot is made about the troubles of drainage. Well, they don't seem to affect the crop. It seems to be fairly healthy. And if the land wasn't any good, the farmer wouldn't farm it. And it would go down to pasture. It obviously is actually good land and is classified as good land, and I think that's right. So I'm concerned about that. We are in a policy vacuum, as Bitley and CPRE point out, but there's not much we can do about that. We actually can't wait. If we don't make a decision today, it goes to the planning inspectorate, and it may, depending on what decision we make. So I am somewhat ambivalent about this. There's a claim that there are no other suitable sites. Tosh and nonsense. There's another solar farm coming up in a minute. There is one opposite, much bigger, already at the early stages of the planning system. Another one has had early consultation, and I know personally of two others, all within a very short distance of this. So to say there's no alternative is just nonsense, because there are indeed alternatives. However, all that said, as you can gather, I'm not particularly keen. I do think that we need to work towards a climate emergency and develop solar. I'm at the cusp, but I'm probably marginally inclined to support this rather than reject it. And I think we should do that. There's plenty of capacity. CPRE was saying there's not enough capacity. Well, there's loads of capacity for 3 of the proposed solar farms, and the rest will have to come when the grid management system is changed. I am concerned about the whole lot together, but the issue is in our planning system we're only looking at this. So I'm not going to propose supporting this, but I feel I'm inclined to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Lumley, please.
The principal planner came up with, I'm going to elaborate on it. He talked about golf courses. What a good idea. If we put solar panels on the golf courses, or half of them, then you could reduce to 9 holes and you'd do the lot. As I've always thought, waste of a good walk. Anyway, we have got policies in this county. SAMDED policy MD12, the Natural Environment and Core Strategy, CS6, that development should avoid quality agricultural land and ensure that all developers make the most effective use of land and safeguard natural resources, including high quality agricultural land. Natural England, I know everybody says that you rest it for 40 years, and by the way, I don't think 40 years is temporary. I never thought that. They say the temporary loss of agriculture for 40 years does not mean the land will remain quality land unless it's managed correctly, because it will just go off. I have got concerns about the views from the AONB. I don't think that necessarily on this one it's been significantly negated. And at 85% 3A, which by definition, if you go through them, let me just find it. So you've got excellent, which is 1, very good, which is 2, and good, which is grade 3A. Again, the principal officer seemed to negate, because it was only 3A, it was at the bottom end of the scale. It's still best and most versatile land. Or was it 95%? Sorry, not 85%, it's 3A. So I'm prepared to hear the rest of the argument, but I also have concern.
Councillor Parsons, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this is a difficult decision, I think, for us to take as a committee. It will likely lead to setting of some form of precedent going forward. We've heard the fact from the MPPF that there is a need for this type of development, and that we should then look at other factors which might outweigh what we're looking to achieve by agreeing to this type of development. The agricultural land issue is, I think, one that is slightly more difficult in this application because of the quality of the land that we're talking about. But when you look as well to our consultees, there are none of our consultees that are objecting to this application, and neither highways, nor SUDS, nor archaeology, none of our consultees are actually objecting to this scheme. We went there this morning, and it is quite well shielded. I'm not saying that it's not visible from the higher ground, as Andy mentioned earlier, but it is pretty well screened from housing and development. And I believe that the applicant was talking about putting in some more screening as far as that was concerned. So I'm marginally in favour of supporting this application, taking account of the fact that it will take away some good agricultural ground for a considerable period of time. But on the balance, I think I support this.
Thank you. Councillor Evans, please.
Thank you, Chairman. I haven't had a chance to visit this site, so I've only based it on the discussions, documents that's there, and some of it. And it does give me concern that, apparently, as I read it, this site is chosen because it's for its nearness to a substation, and that is purely the driver towards it. Archaeology and cultural heritage assessment, I see there are concerns, and it's that balance between that and the climate changes come down to say no problems with it. Highways, quite honestly, I'm surprised at their answer, because it says there should be a transport and construction traffic statement done, but in the report it says there's one already there, and it goes along with that report. That report went in May, but the highways comment is in June. Surely they saw it. It does give me problems, because it was the submission from the applicant on the construction was done from a desktop study. It says in the report. There is various comments there about the narrowness of the lanes and access to it, and the problems with the access during the previous construction of a solar farm. So it does give me problems. Is it in the right place? Should we be actually doing it here? There is also a reference about after 40 years, it will be reinstated. But what if the firm changes hands or anything like this, or does anything? There's no reference about an insurance policy or putting anything in place so that it can be met when that occurs. I won't say if, when that would occur. So I have a number of problems with it, and I've just highlighted those because they haven't really been referred to before. But is it in the right place? I don't think it is.
Councillor, please.
Thank you, Chair. This is a really tricky one. I think that being the A3 arable land, that does concern me, taking arable land out of production, because we do need to be able to produce our food in this country. But we also needing the solar and to be self-sufficient with our energy. It is visible from the ANOV. It will be visible for people walking. It is near a settlement, although they say it's far enough from the settlement that it's within the rules and regulations. To be honest, I'm still sitting on the fence with this one. I'm really unsure, and I'm interested to hear the further debate.
Thank you. Councillor Egan, please.
Thank you, Chair. I too am sitting on the fence with you, not with you, but I didn't have the benefit of a site visit this morning, and I wish I had, but unfortunately I was unable to go. So I have to go on the evidence and the debate that I've heard today. Solar farms, from what I understand it, need to be built in accessible areas. They can't be built on isolated land which isn't close to residential or electricity infrastructure. So maybe we're limited in Shropshire to the number of suitable sites that we do have. Applications like this should be supported where the impact is or can be made acceptable, and that is probably why it's come to us for debate and to make a decision. And also the benefits have got to outweigh any residual impacts, and that's another thing that we need to make a decision on. I do think in Shropshire there's a question: how many suitable, in brackets, areas do we actually have? I mean, Shropshire's predominantly rural. It doesn't have enough brownfield sites, which would be ideal for solar farms, although I understand brownfield sites are much more expensive to put solar panels on, including put them on the tops of factories, which would be ideal, of course, in many places. There's a big demand to satisfy for solar farms, which in itself is a form of diversification for agricultural use. Does it represent a permanent destruction of the landscape? I don't think it represents a permanent destruction, as with solid buildings, for instance, although 40 years is a significant period of time. So I too am slightly undecided on this, but I will make a decision, but I'd like to listen to the rest of the debate.
Thank you. I'll just bring Graham back in now and I'll go to Councillor while that's all right.
Yeah.
Thank you. If I can give some kind of interim comments. Firstly, Councillor Evans mentioned about archaeology, cultural heritage and some concerns. I didn't, from the heritage information, detect that there were outstanding concerns on that. In terms of the distinction between the construction management plan that was in the application and the Highway Officer's comments, there was an interim construction management plan accompanying the application, which determined the generic levels of mitigation that could occur during the construction phase. However, that's been translated into a condition requiring a site-specific construction management plan should the development proceed. There are a number of other issues. I think we mentioned the fact that there are a number of these sites emerging. I think Councillor Boddington mentioned. The situation is that we can't judge every single one that we're aware might be coming across. It's a sequential issue. If we have an application and that is approved, then that becomes relevant context in which to assess another one. But if they're all coming forward at various stages, but none of them have actually been approved, then we can't assume that they'll all come forward, because that's yet to be decided. So the principle of assessing cumulative effects is dependent on what's gone before, effectively, not what might come. So there was some reference to emerging policy with regard to best and most worst. So I think that perhaps we're referring to comments by the now Prime Minister Liz Truss prior to her becoming Prime Minister, where she indicated some objection to the principle of using best and most versatile. That isn't actually an adopted policy as such. The policy states, which we must go by at committee, that there is a general presumption that best and most versatile land shall be supported. At the same time, there are other policies that kind of go in a different direction. So there's a policy that supports the provision of renewable and low carbon infrastructure and says that it must be approved unless there are material reasons why it shouldn't. That policy bites against the policy on agricultural land preservation, and it really is for members to decide what weight they wish to give to both of those policies. Talking about policies, there is an issue to do with the Berrington Parish Council comment that there isn't a kind of adequate template of policies and guidance. I would beg to differ on that. There is guidance at all levels. We have local guidance with the MD12, the emerging policy, I think it's 29, which is a bit more specific on solar. It reiterates the support for retaining best and most versatile. But then you have the National Energy Policy, you have Shropshire's Declaration of Climate Emergency, the Shropshire Climate Action Plan, the government's energy policy for 2022, which advocates a five-fold increase in the rollout of renewable. I think ultimately there is a question about whether there is, it's the relative weighting between the agriculture and the other, but certainly in terms of policy, there are adequate policy contexts. It would be nice to have supplementary planning guidance on that, but we are where we are with this. We have an adequate policy context at local, national level, and it is sufficient to make an informed decision on this application. I think that's really all I want to say at the moment, Chair. Oh, just other than to say, sorry, in terms of the locational constraint, there is some suggestion that because you have a raft of these in the Ludlow area, that implies that there aren't stringent locational constraints. But I think that isn't the case. If you look at the detailed mapping of the availability for grid connections, it's a bit like a kind of a spider coming out from the substation. There are kind of corridors of connectivity, but the further away from that you go, the more costly, the less viable these schemes become. And that's a location. There's also the capacity. What energy level can the substation support? Can the national grid support? But additionally, you need suitable gradient land. You need a willing landowner. You need the land to be accessible. And you need it to be clear of other environmental constraints such as local wildlife sites, traveller size, protected species and such like. By the time you apply all those sieves, I can really assure you, otherwise you'll be seeing lots of these things coming up all over the place. You are left with a very select number. Yes, we have a raft of them, and there are a few in and around the Ludlow area. But there is an extent to which the ones that come first may take up the available grid capacity in any event, so the others may not proceed if the first ones do. So I just wanted to sort of put that in context, Chair.
Thank you, Graham. Councillor Wilde, please.
Okay, thank you. Just going back to what was said at the beginning, I mean, we're all in favour of putting up solar panels in the right place. Our climate emergency says we need to do 500 acres a year. From what I've been told, we've got about 18 applications either in or coming in. So that's 2,000 acres, and that's just within a few month period. So there isn't a shortage of sites. And I was interested to hear Mr. French say about grid capacity. So that is something that I don't think we've necessarily addressed in any of our policies. So what I'm really saying to everybody here today is, yes, this is something that we absolutely need to do, but we have an opportunity at this point to actually put a line in the sand and say to all the people who are wishing to do these schemes, actually, yes, we will support you, but we will support you on grade 4 and 5 land, not best agricultural land, because otherwise we're going to be giving up quite a proportion of our agricultural land. If we're giving up over 2,000 acres a year, we're going to end up in 40 years' time with hardly anywhere to grow anything. So I think, we desperately need some guidance ourselves. And I think the line in the sand has to be that, grade 1, 2 and 3A should not be used for solar farms. That absolutely is best agricultural land, and we need that for our own food security. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Evans, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Reference what I said before about traffic. The only reference I can see is on page 42 of the report before us, where it says a traffic assessment plan sets out a variety of specific mitigation measures. I've read that in the report, unless there's a later one, and it doesn't to me. Again, it's based on the original report, and there may be a later one, and it talks about 8 till, and it gives timings during the week and on a Saturday. It doesn't say anything about peak times, school times, measuring those at all that I can see. And for comments as well, I've also written to the Director of Planning, about solar farms, asking what guidance is there, and the answer that I've had back is there is concern about where Shropshire Council is at present, and there are a series of briefing sessions going to be set up for members to receive information about solar farms because of the number that's coming forward and the way they need to be looked at in the future. So again, I have problems with the construction of it, and I saw Mr. French put his hand up then, so I'm interested in seeing it, but as far as I can see, it isn't there. And in this report at 6320, it says that, 6321, Shropshire Council Highways have not objected subject to a construction management plan condition. I haven't seen that condition. It may be there or not, but this is the officer's report that is mentioned here, and it isn't included in that. Thank you, Chairman.
You want to come back to good?
I thought we had included a construction management plan condition in Appendix 1, Councillor Evans.
Through you, Chairman, I can't see it. I may be mistaken. So have a look, please, because it doesn't give times or anything about that and the vehicles. And there's also a reference in the papers before us about a bridge that is there. And in the report submitted by the consultant on it, it says that it has not considered any bridges in giving access to this site.
Go back there, yeah.
The route doesn't involve travelling over Lettich Bridge. It involves coming in from the Clebury Road, which is the opposite side of Squirrel Lane. In terms of the condition, it is a pre-commencement condition, and issues such as sort of detailed timings of movement of materials onto the sites and communication between drivers and such like would be covered under the pre-commencement construction management plan condition. It's condition 4. Thank you very much.
Councillor Bagnall, please.
Thank you. I also found this quite a difficult case to decide about. I am concerned at the idea of huge areas of the county being covered with solar farms, but I also think that we speak of the need for sustainable power and so on, and we need to be putting our money where our mouth is. I think nobody wants this in their back garden. I appreciate that. And we have got concerns for food security and the use of of good quality agricultural land for solar farms. But we have to accept that not all locations are going to be suitable for solar farms. Certain conditions must apply. And I think rather than sort of being afraid that we'll be setting a precedent, I think we need to take each case on its own merits. And I think that in this particular case, it seems to be fairly well screened, although I do take Councillor Boddington's point that from further afield, perhaps it will be more visible. But I am erring on the side of supporting this. I think we need to be seen as as a council to be supportive of this kind of power generation. And yes, I mean, certainly if it means that every other field in the county is going to be covered with solar farms, then no, that's not going to be acceptable, and we will have to take each of those cases on their own merits.
Thank you. Councillor Bollington, please.
Thank you. Just to clarify the point about sites, I wasn't suggesting they shouldn't be decided in a sequential fashion at all, or that the future ones should be taken into account. My point was the fact there are so many sites coming forward that we know of shows we have no shortage of sites, and therefore this is not the only one. And in terms of capacity, that I don't know whether Graham is aware or not, that Western Power Distribution are upgrading to an active network management system, and they say that will allow more solar farms to come on stream in the Ludlow area, or equivalent suppliers of energy. So, I mean, I don't think we need to worry about capacity, but we shouldn't think that capacity would run out, because that's not the nature of technology, is it? We're all looking at laptops, which are far more powerful than anything we had a few years back. And that's the same with electricity network, and so there will be more. Basically, those are my points.
Okay, Councillor Wild.
Yeah, okay, thank you. I just want to ask Mr French a couple of questions. So, we've all established that, we're all in favour of growing solar power. I mean, certainly in other countries, they have got much better ideas about where to put it. It goes up the side of roads and all these kind of things. But going back to what Councillor Bagnall said, my concern is, I know we have to look at what's in front of us, but my concern is if we establish the principle that the committee will accept all good quality agricultural land, that's 3A and above, for solar farms, I feel like we're setting ourselves a precedent, because somebody else will come along and say, well, actually, we've got 3A land, so you need to accept ours because you accepted this one here today. So are we setting a precedent? Because I think we are.
I fully appreciate and understand your the thrust of your question on that. I think that this need not necessarily be seen as a precedent. I think there is the argument is to look at each application on its individual merits. In this particular case, yes, 95% of the land is westernmost first on grade 3A. However, we are dealing with a very large estate, and the estate has lots of other cereal land in the vicinity. And what they have said is that this land, it's on glacial boulder clay, it's prone to wetness. It looked okay when we were there were a few puddles on the side at the top, but it is prone to wetness. They have put land drains in, the land drains are not working effectively. What that means is that whilst ostensibly it's growing productive crop, it takes more effort from an agricultural perspective to do that. And cereal crop window is quite a narrow window. They all have to harvest it, in a relatively short time while it's relatively dry. They have problems getting on these fields to harvest it, and then that affects their progress with regard to the others. It's a large estate. It has finite agricultural infrastructure in which to undertake the harvest. The argument that they're making is that to take this out of intensive agricultural production for 40 years would allow them to be more efficient with the other cereal land on the large estates. It will provide stable profitability by providing diversification and other source of revenue. They can invest in other agricultural practice in the estate. So there is an offset benefit from it. Yes, we may be losing some agricultural land, but in the detailed circumstances of this individual estate, this farm management regime, it is facilitating more efficient farming of the other land on the estate, and it is allowing inward investment to further secure stable profitability and efficiency. So I would contend that it isn't establishing a precedent because there are individual factors related to the way that this farm is being managed that would mitigate to some extent for that. There is still a loss for 40 years of that land, but it is reversible. It's providing additional income and efficiency savings for the estate. So it isn't simply a case of looking at the loss of the land for 40 years for that purpose. It is a more complex picture, and I would contend there is mitigation in this case.
Can I just come back? Yeah, I would say, coming back to, you can't have your fun and eat it, because, you know, when all's said and done, it's grade 3 agricultural land, so it is best agricultural land. However you wrap it up, it is good agricultural land. And the point I'm trying to make is that in a county like this, we only have a finite amount of good quality agricultural land. And ultimately, this will lead to food security issues within the country. It's a total irrelevance whether it's a big or a small farm and their diversification. That's not our concern. What our concern is actually is doing the right thing. And I think using best agricultural land is a mistake, and we should actually I think we should actually refuse this application and let an inspector decide at what grade agricultural land these solar panels should sit on. Thank you, Chairman. So I'm quite happy to move the recommendation to refuse this application.
Councillor Bollington.
Thank you, Chair. Like Councillor Wild, I didn't quite agree with those arguments there from Mr. French, because obviously if the farmer finds it too difficult to farm this land, you put it down to sheep, because that's what we have in South Shropshire, far more sheep than we have people. And so, you know, you just put the land down to pasture, which is straightforward enough, and it's quite suitable for that. Councillor Wild has made a proposal. Having listened to the debate, I believe now that I want to go against this application. I was marginal before, marginally in favour, but I think having listened to the debate, I think we should refuse. I would suggest the two grounds. I mean, I've listened to what Councillor Evans said about traffic access. That's one of those that we'll probably never win on. You know, there's no suitable traffic access on Squirrel Lane. Last time, although it's said that the traffic won't go over Lettich Bridge, that was said last time, the bridge was seriously damaged by construction traffic. And in fact, because we couldn't prove it, the council had to pay to have it repaired. And it caused great deal of distress and disturbance of residents. But that's sort of one of those I think we never win on. But there are two reasons which I think are very clear, and in no particular order, that I think the grounds for refusal are views from the ANOB and rights of way, and the loss of best and most versatile land.
Can I just add, I don't know if it's worth wasting the time till we know what the result of the vote is, but I would quote the MPPF paragraph 174B, and I'll also quote our emerging policy as well, which is DP 26, and also CS6 paragraph 4.78. Thank you.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Can I then formally second that?
Yeah. Can I just bring General Hawley in to talk about the highway? Could you come and just address the issue on highway for this application, please, Gemma?
Okay. They go press the right hand button.
Yeah, there's concern about the construction access to the site, rather than going over the bridge like the last time.
Okay. So I haven't been so Gemma Lawley, Developing Highways Manager. I haven't been party to the discussions that have taken place, so apologies if you've already covered it. My understanding is the construction management plan has been submitted, and there's a condition that's to be placed on any permission granted that requires that the applicant resubmit that for approval. I think, as Councillor Boddington has sort of alluded to, in the past, we have had issues along Scroll Lane. This sort of type of development is quite difficult from a highways perspective because once it's actually in place, the likely impact on the surrounding network is relatively low in terms of the agricultural movements. It is down to the construction and the decommissioning at the end. So it's always important from our perspective that we cover both aspects as well. So any plan would need to be counted to. I think from our perspective, we do acknowledge that Scroll Lane is restricted in width and that it would need to be carefully managed because of the issues that we raised previously and the sort of size of vehicles. But on balance, as from a highway authority perspective, we haven't raised any objection to it, subject to the conditions to be placed on. So, but if any members of the committee have got any specific highway questions they want me to address, I'm happy to do so.
Questions to Gemma, please, before I go to Roger. Yeah. Councillor Evans, please.
Right. Thank you, Chairman. Welcome, Gemma, to the meeting. But it was referred to condition 4 in the appendix 1, and it says there, prior to any development taking place, a revised construction traffic management plan shall be submitted. There isn't one at present. I welcome the comment from Gemma to say that one will be done, and I also note on page 60 of our papers a construction and traffic management plan the last time this lane was used and the problems that occurred. I support the previous 2 councillors, and this may only be there for 6 months, but it's there for 6 months with that disruption that's there. So the main issues are the ones that was put forward and seconded, but there are other issues because of the right place for this to take place. And if we do need to draw a line, we need to be sure that we're setting the right parameters for the future, for any future solar farms. As I've said, the director will be talking to members in the future. But for today, that's me.
Did you want to come back on the job?
I may need to just check with Graham, but my understanding is that there is a construction management plan that has been submitted as part of the environmental maintenance. The environmental plan, isn't there really? And I can't find the appendix, but I think the issue with the construction management plan that's been submitted, from our point of view, hasn't done an assessment of the route to the site, and that's what we would normally expect. So on this occasion, that's why we've asked for things. But can I just check with Graham, because I don't want to mislead committee if that's not the case. But I'm pretty sure I read on.
Yeah, that is the case. A generic indicative construction management plan accompanied the application. We are conditioning under condition 4 the requirement for a more detailed construction management plan, which will be site specific. It's a pre-commencement condition, and it will require that regard is had to the detailed condition of the highway. That's not to say that the generic construction management plan didn't assess that, but it didn't go to the level of detail, taking photographs and looking at individual passing places and potholes and such like. But I think it is the case, though, that the traffic is not coming via Lettich Bridge this time. The construction route in is from the opposite end, from the Clevering Road. So, the issues that occurred last time round, which were allegedly the result of construction traffic building the smallest site on the other side of the road, are not covered this time because we're not using the same route in.
Okay, thank you. Right, we have a proposal on the table for refusal against the offer's recommendation. Could you just run through that again, please, Councillor Bullington?
Thank you. Could I just clarify with Councillor Evans whether he still wishes access and traffic management to be part of the objection?
Through you, Chairman, as long as it will not destroy and mitigate the first 2, which are the main ones, leave it out. But it is of concern to me. But the main ones there, and I did not want to mitigate, reduce the emphasis of those first 2 points, Chairman.
I think we should leave it on the ones that I put, because I think there's an important principle here.
Yeah. So, would you like me to read those out?
You can do, either one.
we object to this application and go against officer's recommendation on the grounds that this is on best and most versatile land, that there is impact on views from the ANOB and nearby rights of way, and these conflict with NPPF 174 B, thank you, CS6 and DP 26 in the emerging local plan.
Okay, you're going to take your vote, please, if you would, Kim. Thank you.
And you're happy with those, councillor Wild, there's no reasons?
Yeah, I think, I think the emerging one is a slight, which is, yeah, it's DP 26, yeah, I'm happy with that, thank you.
Okay, so we'll take the vote to go against the officer recommendation for the reasons just put forward by councillor Boddington. If you can indicate whether you're voting for or against the proposal, please. Caroline Bagnall?
Against.
Andy Boddington?
For.
Roger Evans?
4.
Nick Hignett?
4.
Christian Lee?
4.
Hilary Luff? 4. Nigel Lumbey?
4.
Tony Parsons?
Against.
Claire Wild?
4.
Mark Williams?
4.
And David Evans?
Against.
So that's 8 votes for and 3 votes against.
Okay, so the application has been refused. Thank you. Do you want to have a break now?
Yeah, what have we got? Have we got 10 minutes, have we, David, or
Yeah, go on.
going to make a spectacle?
Yeah, okay.
for the slides to come on, but this application is for a solar farm with a capacity of up to 49.99 megawatts, which is the equivalent demand of 10,400 homes on land at Brickhouse Farm, Greet, east of Ludlow, which members visited this morning. So access would be achieved via the existing field access off Canaan Lane. And the proposals include solar panels, security fencing, CCTV cameras and the other elements that were in the previous application. In this case, it's a slightly larger scheme, so it would undertake construction over a period of 6 to 9 months. The site would have, as with the previous one, an operational life of up to 40 years, after which it would be decommissioned, and the agricultural land would be reinstated. So the solar park would consist of photovoltaic solar arrays with a maximum height of 2.8 metres, so slightly shorter than the ones in the previous scheme, and would be contained behind a 2.5 metre deer fence with a security system mounted on 2.5 metre poles. Over 95% of the land between the solar panels would be accessible for plant growth, biodiversity enhancements and sheep grazing. 6.5 hectares of biodiversity enhancement area are proposed, including hedgerow strengthening, 1,418 square metres of native woodland along the northeastern boundary, and this delivers a net biodiversity gain of 46%. Whilst not forming an integral part of the current application, the applicant has also committed to provide a community benefit fund for use by the adjacent to a minor road passing through Greet. The Shropshire Hills area at its closest point is 2.4 kilometres to the north. The closest listed building is Lower Cottage, which is grade 2, and that's 20 metres to the east of the northern boundary. And the property is owned by the application site landowner. So Greet Parish Meeting has objected on the basis of effects on best and most versatile agricultural land, visual impact, traffic ecology and amenity. We've had 128 public representations so far. 106. I think it may have been updated from the update report, because we've had a few more since. So there are 106 objecting, 21 in support, 1 neutral. Additionally, we've had a 60 signature support petition, which is incorrectly referred to as a 6 signature petition in the report. So the main concern of objectors relates to the impact on agricultural land, construction disturbance, traffic safety, advocating alternative locations for this type of development, effects on biodiversity and visual impact. There's a lot of correspondence. It's all available online, and I've tried to sort of phrase it accurately in the report. So supporters advocate clean, green energy, which proposals would deliver, ability to meet the annual electric needs of 15,000 homes, offsetting, I think it says 11,400 homes, so between 11,000 and 15,000 homes, anyway, offsetting 11,200 tonnes of carbon dioxide per year, and a temporary, albeit long-term and reversible nature of the proposals. Additionally, the CPRE has written on objection to proposals and has copied the representation to members. The applicants responded, providing additional clarifications which are listed in the late reps report. The CPRE has again responded to this by circulating representation to members, but the issues involved are the same: agricultural land, construction, visual need. There are no objections from statutory consultees as with the previous application, and this includes with respect to highways, ecology, drainage, trees, heritage and public protection. And the Council's Climate Change Task Force, who unfortunately couldn't be with us today, we were trying to get the head of the team to attend, but they've written in support of these proposals as with the previous one, and cite the ability to help mitigate the effects of climate change. So I referred in the previous application presentation to the Shropshire Declaration of Climate Emergency, the subsequently adopted Climate Strategy and Action Plan, the Zero Carbon Shropshire Plan. I also referred to the fact that the electricity distribution grid in Shropshire is heavily constrained. There may be plans afoot, I'm not fully aware, to upgrade the sort of southern infrastructure, but I know that there have been issues with some of the northern infrastructure, for instance, around Whitchurch for years. So given limited opportunities to obtain grid connections, that this is considered to constrain the available locations for such sites. So the current applicant also undertook a very detailed exercise in order to identify proposed sites, which is one of the very few locations meeting relevant criteria for the solar farms in terms of grid capacity aspect, access, ownership, and absence of environmental designations. An agricultural survey notes that it said 75% of the site comprises subgrade 3B soils. I think, in fact, that should have read 79%, which is therefore not best and most versatile. Some areas of grade 2 have been identified, but are confined to the Lettich Brook area and of limited individual size. So the applicant advises that government targets for a 5-fold increase in solar would result in 0.3% of the UK land area being used by solar, according to the Carbon Brief 2022. This is equivalent to around half the space used nationally by golf courses, as I previously mentioned. So there's no reason to doubt the ability to graze sheep between the arrays. This is done at many arrays and can be demonstrated. The intention to reinstate the site to agriculture after the operational phases is backed by an insurance bond with the landowner, as was in fact the case with the previous scheme. And LVIA, Landscape and Visual Impact Assessment, concludes proposals wouldn't adversely affect the AONB, which is over 2.5 kilometres away, or the wider landscape, and emphasised the longer term gains which the landscaping proposals would secure. Remember, significant net biodiversity gain including a new woodland belt, reinforcement of existing woodland and hedgerows, and provision of new hedgerows, and native wildflower kind of planting meadow areas around the edges. So, pardon me, the Council's landscape advisor confirmed support for the methodology and conclusions of the LVIA. Heritage assessment finds no or negligible harm to heritage impacts, with the exception of the grade 2 listed lower cottage owned by the applicant at the northern part of the site, where less than substantial harm is identified at the lower end of the scale. The public benefits of the proposal, when we have a kind of less than substantial heritage impact, then it requires us to apply a planning balancing exercise to determine whether the level of benefit of a proposal outweighs the any minor residual less than substantial harm. And in this instance, the officer conclusion is that the public benefits of the renewable energy provision and addressing climate change are fully sufficient to outweigh that limited harm. So a construction traffic management plan would control the construction phase with traffic using approach from Long Canaan Road. Only smaller HGVs would be permitted to use the site. Larger ones would offload to a temporary compound to the west of Canaan, with loads transferred to tractor and trailer. And you saw this morning that tractors and trailers do tread these roads. So the residential access to the properties along Canaan Road would be maintained at all times. We have no objections from the Highway Authority. An ecological assessment finds no adverse ecological impact and quantifies the biodiversity net gain which the proposals would deliver. Hedgerows would be managed for wildlife and a range of breeding boxes erected for bats and birds. Biodiversity enhancement areas would include wildflower meadow and wild bird seed grasslands. The installations, the report finds no evidence of potential impact to leisure tourism, and site survey evidence suggesting solar installations don't discourage visitors. So inclusion in the proposals would provide valuable locally produced renewable energy whilst helping to address the effects of climate change in accordance with national and local policies and strategies. Detailed surveys support the application. There are no outstanding objections from technical consultees. The NPPF advises production of renewable energy as a material consideration which should be given significant weight, and that sustainable development proposals which accord with the development plan should be approved without delay. It's considered the application can be supported subject to the recommended conditions. I won't say any more at this stage. Chair, thank you.
Thank you. I've got 4 speakers on this one. I've got Lynn Hughes. And you're a local resident and you're this 3 minutes to address the committee. Please, Nick.
Good afternoon. Thank you for allowing me to represent my objection in person. Regarding the so-called traffic survey of the 2.3 mile lane between Caneham and Street. The survey was conducted in February, the coldest, wettest, most miserable month of the year, along with the shortest daylight hours. There are no tourists in the local B&Bs, holiday homes, caravan or camping sites. There would have been no walkers or cyclists, no harvesting or breeding stock requiring multiple daily visits. Thus, the applicants selected the month which they will have known would present the data most favourable to themselves and most unfavourable to the residents. In addition, somebody decided to conduct the survey over a very short stretch of the lane's length. In fact, just 100 yards approximately on either side of the proposed point of entry to the site, less than 1/4 of a mile from the Greek crossroads, and less than 1/10 of the lane's length approximately was surveyed. The data therefore provided to yourselves could not possibly have included the 80% of the lane's usage. The main traffic which travels to and from the majority of the properties that are situated along the remaining 2.1 miles of the lane's length, both this and its subsidiaries, was completely omitted from the survey. It is beyond belief that those who designed this survey were not aware of this, and therefore that the data they gathered would indeed paint a false picture. Thank you.
Any questions for this, please? No. Thank you very much. I call Tim Waller, Parish Council. And you have 3 minutes to address the committee, sir. Please.
Thank you, Chair. It is what Bluefields don't say that I think is as important as what they do say. They say they will be 49.9 megawatts of electricity produced. They don't say how they will reach this calculation, only that improvements have been made in efficiency. So suddenly 50 hectares of land can produce 50 megawatts of electricity when only recently the national average was half that due to the variables of solar energy. So what improvements? Measured by whom? Surely the council want to verify this. They say this solar farm needs to be near a substation. It doesn't. As long as they're near the 132 kV line, it can be anywhere. And the electricity gets fired up to the national grid, which is great. It doesn't need to be local because actually Ludlow doesn't need that extra electricity. If they do, they've got capacity for it. But it means that it's only cost and convenience that makes this land attractive to Bluefields. And they are not, Chair, factors for the council's consideration. However, building on agricultural land is. If you build on this land and all the other land that is coming up for application, we will have to import even more food at a time when the world is teetering. Is that really a good idea? Bluefields have also set the production figure at 0.1 megawatt under the amount that would make it an NSIP. Now, despite the confusion over grade 3 soil, they know that Eustace and Truss are against building on agricultural land. So Bluefields don't want the proposal to go before the government, but they want the production figure just high enough to satisfy the council and get the go-ahead before those Truss-Eustace guidelines may become policy, as Liz Truss suggested they would in Ludlow 3 weeks ago. GPM urges the council to listen to these recent guidelines from the government, not cherry pick the ones that are expedient to both parties. The land is 20% BMV land. You can't change that. It doesn't matter whether it's near the river or whether it isn't. It's 20% BMV land. National planning policy, much quoted by the planning officer, stipulates that any use of BMV land must be justified by submitting a detailed report identifying alternative sites. Bluefields have not done this, and neither, to GPM's knowledge, has the planning officer asked for one. Bluefields say they're providing biodiversity corridors, bat boxes, etc. What they don't say is the current wildlife will perish as foraging won't be possible over 135 acres of panelled land. The fire hazards, 2 huge solar fires in Somerset and Devon recently, so ambulance, medical and fire engine access during construction is desperately an important issue, and nothing has been said about these specific points. Neither has there been any mention of the oil pipe running straight through the middle of the site that needs a 6-metre clearance. An oil pipe running straight through the middle of the site needing a 6-metre clearance. Committee, we know I don't know if the council are even aware of that pipe. Committee, we know the council is very proud of its carbon zero by 2030 pledge. It even outpledges the government by 20 years, and they are determined to see it through. So understandably, the council leader, the planning officer want to seize on this massive scale opportunity. However, GPM urges the committee not to let that determination blind them to the irrevocable damage this proposal and others will bring to our food growth, the industrialisation of our countryside, the ecosystems that actually keep us alive, and most importantly, the lives and livelihoods of local citizens who should be shown respect for their views and rural knowledge, as shown in their numerous objections.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions from all, please? No. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Now call on the local member, Richard Hopper. Please. You have 5 minutes, Richard, to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you again, committee. This actually come through the post the other day. One of many magazines that come from the farming press. Cost warning over drought and food production. We know it's there. We know it's real. Much will be said about the land, the quality of the land, and whether it lies on the damp side or whether it's freer draining. What I do know, and it's been evident this season through the dry period, is on the heavier land, it's produced far better crops than the lighter land that has shown severe drought. So that is an issue. In my youth, I was a member of Great Young Farmers, and it's only natural that the strong relationship to agriculture and food production is there. So it hasn't been mentioned in committee. It has been mentioned in other forums. I do not want the word NIMBY or NIMBYism to even be considered. There is already a high level of resentment within the farming community. A good many farmers take on additional land, either for farm business tenancy, agreements or full tenancy to enable them to produce food, because that's what we do. From entering the site, you probably went past a pile of manure. That ground, it was certainly there yesterday, and I don't believe it's been spread overnight. That manure indicates, and I know only too well, that this ground is in good heart. It's been part of a rotation. You only have to pick up a piece of that soil, rub it between your hands, and it'll tell you what's there. So don't tell me on the land classification that this is poor land. As you looked across to the rise on the skyline, from that boundary running down to Burford. Tenbury, Burford is renowned for the quality of its land. It grows hops, it grows potatoes, it grows cereal. So don't tell me that this land falls into much lesser of a category. I don't believe it. I farmed. As you came on site visits, you'd come past on the Canaan Road Purvin Farm, which is also subject to a planning application that's been verified. I farmed that for a considerable amount of time, and I can only reiterate what I said to the quality of that land. Last planning meeting, we had a young couple farming land. Poor land, I know it reasonably well, wanting a house, and it carried an officer recommendation for refusal. This committee went against that officer recommendation. This was a young couple trying to make a living out of agriculture. So this sort of underpins the amount of resentment out there when year on year we're losing land, either through through development or by whatever means. It means that there is less land out there for for the production. I don't want to go over the same old ground. Tim was always going to be a hard act to follow. You've got a difficult job. This is a huge application set in a location that is most inappropriate. The road network, I think much has been said with the previous application, but I pretty much, if I had to give any ground, and I know the difficult job and the task you've got today with the applications coming forward, I may have given some quarter to the previous application, but no way can I give any quarter to this application. So I strongly recommend that you go against officer recommendation in this instance and reject this application. Thank you, Commissioner.
Any questions for Richard, please? No, thank you very much, Richard. Now call Jonathan Selwyn, the agent, please. And you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Jonathan Selwyn. I'm the Managing Director of Bluefield Development, the applicant for this project. The Bluefield Group is a well-established UK business which develops, builds and operates solar farms. We're in it for the long term. We currently own 107 solar farms, providing up to 3% of the UK's electricity requirements. We have 130 staff, mostly operating from Bristol, and field engineers operating from regional hubs. The climate emergency, cost of living crisis and energy crunch all are linked by how we generate, use and supply energy. We urgently need to generate energy from new, low-cost, low-carbon sources now. Solar is the lowest cost energy to deploy and it's the quickest to deploy. It's currently 1/9 the cost of gas. Solar is already making a difference in this country. For example, according to the National Grid, between June and August this year, solar often provided up to 25% of daytime electricity. While we were on the site visit this morning, I checked the National Grid app. 46% of energy was being produced in the southwest by solar, but only 5% in the West Midlands. And that's because the West Midlands doesn't have much solar. It can only be achieved, the government targets, by deploying solar on land and buildings. But if we only deployed solar on rooftops, it would take 150 years to deploy that government target at the current rate of installs. It's very rarely possible to develop solar on brownfield land because most is allocated for housing or commercial development and is therefore too expensive. We know that solar is very popular according to the government's own surveys, but a recent constituency level poll for Survation found that in Ludlow, 91% of people support renewable energy projects in their local area. The same number believe the government should use wind and solar farms to reduce energy bills. When we come to grid capacity, grid is incredibly constrained. I've heard what people have said, but it is very constrained. We're being given dates of 2028 and 2032 for new grid connections at the moment, so we can't deliver the government's targets as a result. I just wanted to comment that the tenant farmer on this piece of land is retiring, and that's another reason we feel it's suitable. We currently graze sheep on rotation on more than 40% of our solar farms, and that's what we intend to do at Brickhouse. It's very successful. As you will know, there is no objection from highways, and our construction transport management plan is included as a condition. Most solar farms in the UK are built in rural areas, and the industry is very experienced at doing so. Okay, I'll just
sum up, please.
Yeah. So to sum up, Brickhouse Farm Solar Farm can help Shropshire address the climate emergency and energy security without threatening food security. The application has no objections from the Highways Authority or any other statutory consultee. It's consistent with national and local planning policy, and it's recommended for approval following a very thorough appraisal by the planning officer. We hope you'll agree with this, and I'm very grateful for you to listen to me.
Thank you. Any questions for Jonathan, please? Claire?
Yeah. Just a quick question. You're the managing director of the firm.
Yes.
You obviously listened to the last application. So on that basis, would you be willing to withdraw the 18% of grade 2 land from this application? You're the boss, you could do that right now.
Yes, I think we could do that.
You could do that right now?
Yeah, I mean, we will have to just check in, because one thing I didn't mention was that the pipe that was mentioned before that runs through, it's a multi-fuel pipe, and we've provided 6-metre easements on both sides of that. It is shown on the plan. So we'll just have to make sure, if we withdraw it, it will be consistent with the technical design that we have, but we'd be willing to look at it.
So, sorry, somebody said it's 21%. Whatever percentage, you would be prepared to withdraw all the grade 2 land from the application?
3A. Yeah, 3A, Claire.
I thought it was grade, there's grade 2 and 3A.
There's also grade 4.
Yeah, there's grade 4, yeah. So you'd be prepared to withdraw all the grade 2 and 3A land from the application?
I think I'd have to consult with my technical engineering colleagues, because obviously the design has been submitted for planning, and we'd have to see where exactly it was, whether it affected, for example, the substation, which needs to go up near to the overhead electricity line. So I'd certainly be willing to look at it and come back to you on that, but I think, sitting here, I think we could probably withdraw a lot of it. One thing to note, though, is that farmers farm to the lowest grade land on a land parcel. So if there's a land parcel that has grade 2, 3A, 3B, they will farm to 3B, because they can't divide up the way they farm. It's something that has been made clear to us by the NFU and others, that they farm to the lowest grade. So if one parcel is grade 2, they can farm that to grade 2. But if another parcel is grade 2 and 3A and 3B, they will farm that to grade 3B. So it's not always very neatly divided, the farm area. I don't know, Alan, do you know exactly which parts, my colleague, grade 2?
The grade is, it's very small pockets, isn't it? I think there's a little bit towards the west, and then I think there's a small pocket kind of around like the centre.
Given there's some confusion, I don't know what members think. Maybe this application ought to be deferred for them to come back so that they can take it out and us look at it again. That might be the simplest course of action. I don't know, Chairman, members.
I think we ought to listen to the debate first and decide from there.
Oh, okay.
Councillor Love.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. I think we should take on board what he was saying about when farming, they farm, if you're looking at the whole fields, and if they are a farmer, when he's farming, he farms it to the lowest domination, and that's what you would be doing with it's basically the same principle, isn't it? You can't expect them to a farmer wouldn't take the middle of the field out and farm it one way and then the other side another way. I suppose they do sometimes now with very expensive combines and drills and stuff, but on the whole, as it's
Any more questions for Johnson, please? Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Right, open the committee, please. Councillor Boddington.
Thank you, Chair. There's a bit of confusion there about where the grades of land are. The grade 2 is basically irrelevant because it's in a nature conservation area right at the edge of the site. Although it's within the red line, it's actually not going to have any infrastructure on it. But there are substantial pockets of 3A land. And as Councillor Huffer said a short while back, that this is actually still good land. Just because some of it is actually 3B doesn't mean it's not productive for farming. Otherwise, why would it have been farmed for so long? And for, well, as far as I know, many, many years. So I think this is productive land because it makes no sense for a farmer not to farm unproductive land or to farm unproductively. And we need to take that into account. I'm very concerned about the impact of this in an area which is quite different from the last application. The previous application was at the edge of Ludlow, in an area which is being encroached on by development, and eventually there will be more. because Ludlow's expanding that way. So the police application was there. This is great. And you'll have seen it if you went on the bus this morning. And I'm not sure if you saw quite all of it, but it is really remote and rural. The lane access is much more difficult than Squirrel Lane. And Squirrel Lane, I think, is difficult. But this one really is quite difficult and is quite difficult to get to. And I think there's a major issue with that. I am concerned about the industrialisation of this quite classic landscape and about the views that there are footpaths in Shropshire and Little Hereford that are significantly affected, and they're well-used footpaths. Fine. And I don't know if you visited the church in Greek this morning, but if you stand just outside this church, you can actually see the site very clearly. And there's quite a significant viewpoint there, and that has an impact, I think, on a Grade 2 listed building, or the setting of the Grade 2 listed building. So I mean, of course I listened to the debate and could change my position as I did on the last debate, but I'm inclined to go against this.
Councillor Lott, please.
Thank you. As far as they are saying they're going to graze sheep on there, so it is still going to be used for farming and arable work as well. So it's not going to be just solar, it's almost like a double whammy in a way, you're getting both. For both, you know, you're going to get the sheep grade and the solar panels.
Councillor Wilde, please.
Yeah. I'd like to ask the officer a few questions, because I think it's important here we understand. The managing director said part of the site was grade 4. Whereabouts is the grade 4 land? Because I think it's important we understand where the bits of land are. And just to come back on Hillary, really, I mean, everywhere where there's solar panels, they graze underneath. But it's pretty low-grade grazing because, of course, they call them lays, and when you sow the grass, it's only decent grass for so many years, and obviously over time, with it being shaded and the soil is very compacted, it's extremely low-grade grazing under panels, even if it's on the best agricultural land. So I think that's a bit of a red herring. But I'd like to see if they're offering to take it off the grade 3A and land, then I'd like to see what that looks like on the plan.
In order to respond to you, I need to use some visual aids, I'm afraid. I will endeavour to circulate. If I come through the middle.
Could you email us the map?
I could do a screen grab, but it's going to be difficult for me to do it for the entire. So this is the location plan, and on here is a map of the areas of the agri. I'll come round the other members, but the darker green is the not best and most versatile. The lighter green is best and most versatile. The brown is the grade 4. If just by looking very roughly at this, we compare the light, there are areas which could be excluded within your best and most versatile. My concern is, how do you then farm those areas or maintain them? Yeah. Do you simply put them there without a raise and leave them as they are? And what's the sense of doing that? Because they're out of agricultural production then anyway. You couldn't really farm them as contiguous units within that area. So I'll just come round the other side. I'll show you the distribution. So this is the site. The light green is the best and most versatile. Dark green is the 3B, and that's a bit of grade 4 on the side of the river. So you see these packets are sort of isolated within the site. You could exclude them from the arrays, but I'm not really sure what the what the benefits from an agricultural perspective would be. To me, it's overkill. So again, dark green is the not best and most versatile, light green best and most versatile, the grade 4 on the side.
It's not straightforward, is it? It's not straight.
So light green best and most versatile, dark green.
No, grade 4 is only a little bit of the
Or the not best value, whatever it is.
So we have areas here, 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 and at the bottom there. If you didn't put the solar arrays on them, then they'll be surrounded by solar arrays and they will be too small to farm in a sensible way. I think you've already got my statement. The dark green is the not best and most versatile. So the bulk of the arrays could be put on non-best most versatile land, but you're left with an anomaly.
Do you want to come back to it?
Yes, I've seen the plan. It's a very complicated exercise, I think. What Councillor Huffer was saying, I think, is that the grade 3A and 3B on that land are farmed and they're cropped with, I don't know what the yields are off the land, but essentially what I think he was saying was the 3A and 3B are farmed as one. So it's very difficult to pull out one from the other, I think, because of where they are on the map.
Can I just add to that point, Chair? What this map clearly shows is that by Mr. Selwyn's definition in terms of farming to the lowest agricultural grade, it's just stopped itself now. You would be automatic, because the areas of best and most versatile are surrounded by poorer quality land, you're automatically farming to the lower quality denominator. So perhaps that has some implications given the spatial distribution of the best and most versatile within the site as to the actual practical farmability of that land. You're not going to farm it all to a grade 2 standard of productivity because it's surrounded by the grade 3 and everything goes to the lowest denominator. So I just put that point for something for members to consider. It may be grade 2 land, but it may be that it can't be farmed productively as grade 2 land. It has to be done as grade 3 because it's 3A, because it's surrounded by grade 3 land.
Can I make a proposal, please?
Yeah.
I just think because, we're lucky enough to have the managing director here and he has made the offer about altering the site, that I think the most sensible thing to do would be actually to defer this application, let the managing director go back, engage with the parish council and the local councillors and come back with something that may be better, because I think we're making really big decisions here about people's livelihoods and we can't, I don't think we're doing anybody justice. We won't be able to do anybody justice because we haven't got all the knowledge, all the information. So I would propose that we defer it and ask them to go away and come back.
Okay, I'll second it.
Yeah, I think that's probably the best.
Okay. So would you like to take the vote, please, Kim, for deferment?
Okay.
So the applicant can come back with a revised plan.
Okay, so if you'd like to indicate whether you're for or against the proposal to defer the application as proposed by Councillor Wilde and seconded by David Evans. Caroline Bagnall.
For.
Andy Boddington.
Against.
Roger Evans.
Against.
Nick Hignett.
For.
Christian Lee.
For.
Hilary Luff. For. Nigel Lumbey.
For.
Tony Parsons.
For.
Claire Wilde.
For.
Mark Williams.
Against.
And David Evans.
For.
Okay, that's 8 for and 3 against. So it's
8 for and 3 against for deferral. Okay. Thank you for that. Right, we move to item number 8, land off east of Garage Road Close, Albright. Graham, you again, yeah?
I'm afraid so. It's my lucky day, Chair. So, thank you, Chair. This is a full application in erection 24 residential dwellings, associated parking, garaging, access road and open space. We visited yesterday and saw it to be a very vegetated site, shall we say, just off the high street in Albrighton to the north of the primary school. Follows refusal of an earlier similar application, which is currently subject of an appeal to Shropshire Housing Association. Shropshire Homes, okay. So the site's allocated for around 20 homes, suitable for retirement living, and this is by policy S11A of the SAMNED and policy AL1 of the Albrighton Neighbourhood Plan 2013. So the current proposals involve 3 one-bedroom terrace bungalows. Can we just flick through this, which are proposed to be affordable in tenure. 2 3-storey apartments containing 8 2-bedroom and 4 one-bedroom units in total, so 12 in total. 3 3-bedroom detached bungalows, 6 4-bedroom detached dwellings, which were predominantly in the northern half of the site, to the north of that dividing road that we saw there. So the affordables will be in that sort of triangle on the western side of the site. The apartments are in the sort of southeastern or bottom right corner, if you will. They're 3-storey, but they're, well, 2.5-storey effectively, because the 3rd floor is a kind of dormer level. And you have various different types of housing, which are, I suppose, from the medium to larger size, to be fair. The access is proposed off Garage Close in the west, and there is a pedestrian access off High Street, which you see along the eastern side, which you walked up, arriving in a very attractive conservation area there, which is very near to that edge. So the 1.5 hectare site's well vegetated, surrounded by mature trees and hedging with some TPOs. We walked the bridleway, which ran from the end of Garage Close along the southern boundary, and then we turned north into the site. And the northeastern quarter of which just falls within part of the conservation area. So we refer this to committee because it's contrary to the parish council objection, the officer recommendation for approval. And I say, just to remind you, that the previous application was refused in 21 for 18 homes on the same site, and the concerns were basically that it didn't meet the criteria for affordable type home accommodation, which were referred to in the Albrighton and the SAMNED plans. There were also subordinate concerns about a drainage balancing pool, which has been replaced with a smaller soakaway system, and also the design of the structures. So the parish council considers the majority of the site for larger housing not suitable as retirement homes. Local plan specifies 20 dwellings rather than 24. The concerns regarding the amount of traffic would be generated by development using Garage Close. We saw there were some sort of constrictions there yesterday. Concerns about pedestrian safety, which they state are intensified at school pick-up and drop-off times, and they think it will be an adverse effect on amenity. The officer report refers to Councillor Lumby's comments, which are generally neutral. I think it's fair. Former pond is now a soakaway, so all the public open space is usable. Large properties have been moved from the south side, giving the trees more chance to survive. Ratio of 1 to 2 bed properties has increased from 38 to 62%. Dwelling design is considered more in keeping with the top story of the 3-storey apartments now built into the eaves. Conservation have also requested the size of the roof windows is reduced as well, which that change has occurred. And the fallback, what Councillor Lumby says in the comments, forgive me for quoting and paraphrasing, and I'm sure you'll speak in a second, but it's important. So if this is to be rejected, then the appeal on the original would proceed. And if successful, then we would lose the potential benefits that have been brought forward with the amendments in this application. I say I don't want to quote you on that. So there are no objections from technical consultees. Parks and Gardens advised the management company would be needed to manage the public open space. That would automatically happen through any decision. The Shropshire Council Ecology have not objected. Biodiversity survey shows a net loss of biodiversity, but this is compensated in this instance by the applicant's commitment to provide 30 grand in funding, 10,000 for planting replacement cherry trees in High Street, because the existing ones nearest to the entrance to High Street are in a kind of declining state, and 20,000 for management of the nearby Albrighton and Donington Nature Reserve. So the proposals meet relevant biodiversity criteria for that kind of off-site compensatory provision, given also the social benefits from housing in such a sustainable location. So the Council Conservation team are satisfied that there's no intervisibility with the conservation area or Brighton Hall and grounds, which are listed property. Any less than substantial harm is mitigated by the proposed landscaping, and public benefits are assessed to outweigh any harm. Proposed financial contribution will enable replacement of up to 4 existing cherry trees, which also has conservation benefits. The financial contribution will also serve to enhance the nearest part of the conservation areas. I've already said that. So the apartment upper storey dormer windows have now been reduced in size as recommended. Trees have no objections, subject to conditions, and prefer this to the earlier scheme, including planting new trees in public open spaces where there will be less pressure to prune them. County Parks and Heritage Sites Manager has no objections and notes the 20,000 payment to be made for management of the local nature reserve. There are 8 public objections relating to housing mix, overdevelopment, highway safety, loss of biodiversity and residential amenity. Can we just move it down so we can see the houses? Please just get a bit more of the detail there. Thank you. So that's so just stay on that page. Well, these are kind of photorealistic images of what the house types will look like, and the general types of design. Highway Authority acknowledges the safety concerns have been raised in relation to Garage Close, but advises that the site is an allocated housing site, and the allocation was made on the basis of the access being achieved through Garage Close, there being no other available access routes. There's private land access on the route up to the north to High Street, so there's no easement through there other than for pedestrian purposes. The existing access, as you just say, can't be used for that reason. So they consider the Highway Authority that based on the scale of the proposed development, the impact on Garage Close would not be severe, and the highway objection to the granting of consent could not be sustained. They have recommended a planning condition requiring submission of a construction traffic management plan. The developer would retain a pedestrian access through Garage Close to the High Street, so there is connectivity in a non-vehicular way. The existing bridleway and footpath at site parameter will also be retained. So it is a highly sustainable location. So in conclusion, the site is allocated, so principle of development when access via Garage Close has been accepted. It's now compliant in terms of housing mix, being capable of retirement occupation. It shows an improved design relative to the previous refuse scheme. Loss of trees would be compensated for by off-site mitigation, which would also enhance the conservation area. So we had some further discussions as a result of a very helpful site visit we had. We had a representative from the applicant was there. We had some discussion, and there are 3 additional provisions that have been agreed in as commitments. The first of those is to agree to market the apartment properties, the ones in the south of the site, the 12 properties there, exclusively to retirement market in accordance with the local plan stipulation, and giving reassurance, therefore, that traffic levels from those properties will be more commensurate with those of retirement people rather than perhaps more mobile starter families. So second one is to agree a supplementary planning condition to submit a scheme securing a priority entrance gateway feature and lay-by at the entrance to the development from Garage Lane with priority for incoming traffic. Can we go back to the layout plan, please? That's fine, thank you. So on the left-hand side of the area, where the kink in the road is, there would be a proposal to have effectively a lay-by and a build-out, which would control entrance into the site. It would also make that kink safer, and cars coming in would have priority, and there would be a kind of recess space. So they would need to submit a scheme. The plan would be slightly different, but it would improve the access and egress from that area off Garage Lane. The third stipulation, which has been agreed very recently, is that the applicant, Shropshire Homes, is willing to pay a further £10,000 to the Highway Authority as part of a 106 agreement to secure temporary restrictions on street parking at Garage Close during peak school drop-off and pick-up times to avoid bottlenecks from parents parking. Now, this would be, obviously there's a legal cost involved, and that would be covered by this proposed offer. But what it would do, it would be before the Highway Authority to determine what the exact slots were, what the hours, whether it's a whole hour or whether they're 5-minute kind of. The upshot or the objective would be to encourage parents to, if they are parking in Garage Close, to actually park, move their little Johnny off quickly to the school, and then not stay and have a long conversation, so that other parents can use that route in an efficacious way, and so that the peak times there isn't going to be a kind of gridlock with lots of cars trying to actually get into an area that there's no space. So that is to be welcomed. And in terms of the resolution, therefore, in the actual officer report, it should have said, but we have a legal agreement requirement to deliver the affordable homes within the scheme. To that, we're adding the 10,000 for the cherry trees, the 20,000 for the local nature reserve, and now the 10,000 for the Highway Authority fund for the parking restriction. Basically, officers consider this is a better site than the previous one. The fallback position of the appeal, we don't want to have to invoke that. We have looked at Garage Close. It's clearly a kind of constrained area, but there is a principle of access there from the site allocation. And we think with these 3 additional provisions that I've just mentioned, that on balance, any residual concerns can be overcome insofar as we can overcome them in this location. I don't know whether Chair is here, whether you wanted to come in on those issues at this stage.
I can do if it's okay, Chair. Yeah, so I think as Graham's outlined, in terms of the access to Garage Close, it is via a shared surface, and I would say that it's probably slightly unconventional in terms of what we would normally kind of look at. However, when Garage Close was sort of constructed, it was always intended that there would be an extension to Garage Close, and the construction was done with that in mind. I think, as Graham's outlined, it's earmarked for development through the SANDEV, so the principle from a highway perspective had been established, and we haven't raised any objection. With regard to the traffic regulation order, I think that was something that would be subject to consultation, and I think has been previously discussed. So I think as Highway Authority, it would be for ourselves with the local member and the community to monitor the situation, and the contribution we do welcome. So it gives us flexibility to introduce measures as the development comes forward and be responsive to that. The condition that we're proposing for a construction management plan to be submitted, which would look at the timing as well. So obviously the close proximity of the school is quite key. So in terms of kind of deliveries, we would want a level of control with regard to that, and we'd be expecting the construction management plan to address those concerns. So I'm happy to take questions as the debate continues.
Okay. Okay,
Yes, I'm finished.
okay. Right, we've got some speakers on this one. We've got Maggie Bruin, local resident. And you have 3 minutes to address the committee, please, madam.
Press the right.
Yep,
Yes.
you're right.
Good afternoon. I live in Garage Close and I'm speaking on behalf of all residents. Garage Close is a shared surface road, limited visibility in parts and mostly without a footpath. It is also a popular bridle path. This proposed new development will have a major impact on Garage Close despite what the highway reports say, and its use as an access road has to be seriously considered. We have raised many objections regarding the development of this land, but the most important issue is safety, and in particular safety of children attending the local school. The school traffic is a nightmare on Garage Close in Newhouse Lane. At school times there are vehicles fighting for parking spaces in Newhouse Lane and along the full length of Garage Close. And you add in pedestrians walking to the school, and it can only be described as a disorganised, dangerous and unsafe bottleneck. The traffic situation will only deteriorate. As more developments are built around the village, the number of children attending the school will increase. Figures already show a 25% increase in school numbers from 2019 to 2021. And the new development, in addition to creating more traffic, will extend the length of Garage Close, providing even more parking for the school traffic. What will it take a child to be seriously injured or killed before anyone realises how dangerous the traffic situation is? I'm just glad I don't have to make this decision, and the responsibility lies with the Shropshire Council. And yes, this will have a major impact for existing residents. We chose to purchase our lovely homes in a quiet cul-de-sac, and that choice is being taken away from us. Over the years, the traffic has increased, school parking, access for Ashgrove residents, home deliveries, but now we face the prospect of traffic potentially being tripled from a development more than twice the size of the close. Parking restrictions have been suggested, and we see today money has been offered for some sort of solution. We don't want this. We need all-day road parking for visitors to our properties. Why should we be put in an even more disadvantageous situation? Our concerns aren't just about parking, they're about safety and quality of our life. Plans show the development as an open area. Where exactly will our open space be if this goes ahead? And in fact, 4 properties will lose part of their already small front gardens for the access road. It's the residents of Garage Close who will suffer the inconvenience, the noise and disruption from the additional traffic, and it feels like we will end up with poor relations, living on nothing more than a feeder road to this proposed development. Do building regulations really have no duty of care for safety and the lives of existing residents, or is it just a matter of there's a piece of land and we want to develop it? We would also like to highlight the fact that our concerns are echoed by West Mercia Police in their report dated December 21. Please, I beg you to consider the safety and lives of residents and all users of Garage Close.
Thank you. Any questions, please? No? Thank you very much. Nicola Nigel Lumby, the local member, and you have 5 minutes to speak, Nigel, please.
Yes, I welcome the additional 3 things. I've written this without knowledge of those, so bear with me if I sound a little harsh. Can I just say to the members, though, there's not a solar panel on any of these. Now, whether that's good or bad, the law doesn't require it yet. Now, last year's members may remember my passionate plea to reject the previous application, with me being new as a councillor and to the planning committee. The committee refused that application, correctly in my view, but I would say that. The developers have had this alternative proposed for some time and have gone through much work before coming before you again. You will discuss this today with the knowledge that the original inappropriate design for the needs of the village is winding its way through appeal, and I have presented my view against this appeal, but I do feel it's a sort of sword of Damocles over us. As you have read on my online comments on this application, I am torn between the improvements that have been made, in that if this application is rejected, the likelihood is that the original could win on appeal. Is there an agreement if this application today is successful, the original appeal will be withdrawn? Because that was a previous thing that they said. When I put my comments on the planning portal, I thought I may be able to improve the plan further, and so at that stage I ticked the box comment. Bizarrely, the site then puts me as neutral, and I couldn't get that back off. I have been very open-minded and considered the needs of all the residents of Albrighton, and that there is a presumption through Albrighton and Sandev plans that this site would be developed on and that access would be via Garage Close. That said, I want to be supportive to the residents of Garage Close, who have raised a number of concerns regarding the access to the development. They have the knowledge and experience to how this road is used. So to prevent confusion, I must state that I am against this proposal, primarily on traffic safety grounds. As I stated on the last proposal before this committee, that the presumption of the development being mainly for retired persons, self-mitigated against inappropriate and speeding driving and the amount of traffic using Garage Close, safer and less journeys with the excellent walking access into the heart of the village, encouraging older folk. The issues: permanent parking at the top of Garage Close by residents' vehicles from Ash Grove, causing a narrowing of the road to a single file, and that was evident yesterday on the site visit. These vehicles are left there all day. Garage Close is a shared roadway and the separate curved footpath finishes about halfway up. This is also a bridleway, heavily used by walkers until it goes to the right after the first 3 proposed bungalows. This creates a not too safe environment for pedestrians, with no road markings to indicate any preference for pedestrians over vehicle users. Again, the narrow parts, as described above, caused by the parked cars creates danger for pedestrians. And thirdly, the access from Garage Close into Newhouse Lane. This junction and the close itself gets very busy at school dropping off and picking up times. Parents park all over the junction and into the close, with children then who are all over the place. You will note, members, that West Mercia Police have made a rare observation on this proposal, highlighting the very issues I've raised. And what about highways? No issues. Road design to the standard to take additional traffic. Don't see the issue. Move along, nothing to see here. Members, how many times have we discussed in committee that obvious traffic safety is not supported by highways? One such example, not lost on the residents of Garage Close, was the refusal of plan permission a few years ago for the development at the rear of St Mary's Primary School, also in the village. This went to appeal and the planning inspector dismissed the appeal on traffic safety grounds as the entrance was too close to the school entrance, creating a safety issue. The inspector found it strange that highways hadn't identified the issue and mitigated against it. Can I just have one little bit? I'm trying to shorten it. The obvious access would be, so basically, going through at the moment, the local plan, there is a developer, Bonningale Homes, there's a little parcel of land to the east of Garage Close, and they want that. And they're saying to the inspectorate, give us that. There is no access. The only access could be through Garage Close. I asked, could there be any limitations so that we can't have any more vehicles coming through Garage Close? Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, please? No.
Oh.
Right, we now have Robert Perrin, the agent, please. You have 3 minutes to address the committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to address this afternoon's meeting. My name is Rob Perrins and I'm the Technical Director for Shropshire Homes Limited. You'll be aware a previous application for this site was refused last year. The application before you today is aiming to overcome the previous reasons for refusal, one being the proposed dwellings were not meeting the allocation guidelines to provide accommodation suitable for retired people. This application comprises 24 dwellings, 15 are either 1 or 2 bed properties, double the amount proposed in the previous application. The remaining properties comprise 3 and 4 bedroom family homes. 6 bungalows are included that, along with the remaining properties, are designed to lifetime home standards and are adaptable to suit residents' needs with age or through disability that require the home altered to suit. One of the main objections from residents on highway grounds raised concerns over congestion on Garage Close. The site is allocated for housing in the adopted local plan, with access off Garage Close, a principle that has been established previously. A total of 44 spaces are provided within the development. There are 2 spaces plus garages to all market housing, 2 spaces for each of the 2-bed apartments, 1 each for the 1-bed apartments, and 3 affordable homes having 2 spaces each. We've tried to offer a solution to parking concerns of local residents, but were unable to reach an agreement, despite the council's highway officers having no objections to the application. An independent traffic consultant assessed the site at drop-off and pick-up times for the nearby school and confirmed the proposal shouldn't produce any traffic or safety concerns. During the recent site visit with members, we were asked to consider a marketing restriction on the apartments. We've agreed to market them to over 55s only for a period of 3 months, and further agreed a £10,000 payment to the council for them to implement a scheme to manage parking around school drop-off and collection times. A priority entrance feature will also be included to prioritise traffic entering the development to further help the traffic on Garage Close. The scheme brings forward additional footpath links to Albrighton High Street, as well as financial contributions for replacement trees on Albrighton High Street and Donington and Albrighton Local Nature Reserve, totaling £30,000, with contributions of £54,000 toward affordable housing, also provided, and now £10,000 towards off-site parking mitigation measures. Another previous reason for refusal was the impact of the loss of trees on the site. This has been overcome and the council's tree officer is satisfied with the scheme before you today. More trees are being retained than previously, and biodiversity improvements are being made to the local nature reserve, so all residents of Albrighton benefit, with members minded to approve the scheme presented today. There are no technical objections to the application. We have worked closely with your officers and humbly request that our proposal are considered favourably in accordance with your officer's recommendation to grant permission, subject to completion of a Section 106 agreement and associated conditions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Any questions for Robert, please? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Councillor Parsons, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we visited this site yesterday, and it was certainly worth the visit to see both where the housing will go and the access issues that there are associated with this site. Those houses in that development there will be largely hidden on all sides by the hedging, by the footpath at the very bottom end of the diagram there, and you won't be able to see them from the high street either at the north end of that development. So as far as the housing is concerned, particularly now the developer has said that they will be looking to provide this housing to the over 55s, I don't think there's an issue in itself with the housing. The issue is with the access to the housing, and it is a very narrow road, Garage Close, which, as has been already mentioned, doesn't have a footpath for a good distance of it towards the development. I think that the fact now that the developer is prepared to put in some form of lay-by to sort of try to control the traffic, both entering and leaving that development, I think that helps the situation, and I'm sort of in a position where I'm probably going to be looking to approve this application.
Councillor Wild, please, and Councillor.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I do have sympathy with the local residents, but this is a site in the adopted plan, and it's a slightly better version than what they had before. I think the issue that I'm sure all councillors have is schools and the way people drop their kids off at school, and I don't know how we get around this. We've been talking about a green agenda all afternoon, and yet people will still drive half a mile and insist on dropping their kids off outside the school. I mean, when I was little, we used to walk, and that issue, it is an issue, but it's an issue outside the application, really. So So whilst I have a lot of sympathy for them, it is an allocated site and they've got a better deal than they had before. So I don't really think there's any merit in refusing it, because they could end up winning the appeal and having something even worse. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Hignett, please.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with the comments made by Councillor Wilde, really. I mean, there are similar houses and apartments found on the high street. I welcome very much the inclusion of bungalows. Many developers don't like building bungalows, but on this site there seems to be the room to put them, and so it's nice to see that. There was always the possibility of that lane being used for access, and I think the residents, if they weren't informed of that when they bought their properties, or if they weren't aware of that, then it's a shame, or maybe they need to take that up with whoever sold them the houses. I wonder if, I mean, the big problem with this is obviously the parking at peak times, particularly for the school. And I think it's essential that we look at the child safety aspect of this. So I'm pleased that Gemma Lawley is here. I wonder whether, I mean, we need to have a safe footpath or pedestrian way along that road, if that's possible, and I think there is room to put it by the side of the road. Whether it's just delineated or whether it's a specific curb, I don't know. I wonder whether we could possibly look at a sign residents only past this point. When you go first onto Garage Close, I noticed there was because I went on the site visit yesterday, there was a sort of a closed off gateway access area, which I don't think is in use, but I do wonder whether residents only past this point sign could be put there. The issue with parking proposals is, of course, enforcement. It's all like putting as many lines in that as you want to. I've got lines in my village that people take no notice of and just park on them. So like a lot of this comes down to highways, but generally, looking at the scheme that's been proposed this time, apart from the highways issues, I would be welcoming this and willing to support it.
Thank you. Want to come back there, Graham?
Yeah, I think obviously the pedestrian provision is not available outside of Garage Close. We can't make that part of this application. The application is just for the area that we're talking about. I think that it would be a wider discussion in terms of whether it's feasible to extend that pedestrian path a bit further into towards Newhouse Lane, but it isn't really something that forms a kind of part of this application. That's,
okay. Do you want to come in, Gemma?
Yeah, so there was a couple of points raised by Councillor Hignett. Yeah, with regard to the kind of like footway, it is, the access is a shared space, and the concept behind that, probably looked at before, is that pedestrians and vehicles are supposed to sort of share that area, and that is the kind of the ethos. When the original application came in, we looked at the possibility of hard paving the what kind of like this kind of service strip, but it has got bridleway status rather than footpath status, so we came across sort of issues. But I think from kind of Shropshire Council Highway Authority perspective, we're satisfied in terms of the number of movements, or the increasing movements along Garage Close, that it can be accommodated. Whilst there are sort of a total of 37 sort of dwellings on there, then when you look at in the kind of like the morning, not everybody will be sort of using Garage Close in the morning, that there is that potential conflict with the school users, and the traffic regulation order should hopefully try and address that. I think there was a question about the residents past this point. I think one of the key points is that this development will remain private, so there is scope, and it will be within the control of either, I don't know, a management company, but it won't be within Shropshire Council's control. So there is scope, if the developer wishes to do so, to put a sign up saying residents only. Sort of past this point, it will be within their control to do so. And then I just wanted to quickly just touch on the traffic regulation order. That, like I said before, it will be subject to consultation, and it is a difficult balance because residents do want to be able to have visitor spaces, parking outside, but clearly there is an issue with regard to kind of parking at school times, so that needs to be addressed. So, yeah.
Councillor Boddington, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just one comment on the restriction of blocks 13 to 24 for exclusive sales to the over 55s. In fact, that restriction will only be in place for 3 months, and if the apartments aren't sold within that time, they just revert back to no restriction. Now, in a heated housing market, 3 months is probably reasonable, but if the market slows, then they probably won't necessarily be sold in 3 months. And I think that timescale is a bit short.
Okay. Christian.
Yes, I take on board Councillor Boddingson's comments about the 3-month time period, but knowing how desirable an area all Brighton is, I think these homes would sell pretty fast, and also with the development being aimed primarily at retired people, maybe retired people who live elsewhere in the village in larger properties who want to downsize, freeing up larger family homes for families to move into the area. So I am minded to support the application.
Okay. Anybody else wish to speak? No? Are you making another proposal, Claire? Or are you making another proposal to accept the recommendation?
I can do, yes.
Okay. You got a second for that?
I'll second it.
Councillor Love. Right. You take the vote, please, Kim.
Okay, so we've got, can we have a condition that they remove the appeal so that the one that they're appealing will that?
No.
We can't do that.
Can't do that.
Okay.
Okay, so we've got a proposal to accept the officer recommendation with the amendments as Graham set out in relation to the sexual innocence agreement. Was there an additional condition?
The condition was for the priority access.
And the additional condition. Yeah. If you could indicate whether you're voting for or against, please. Caroline Bagnall.
For.
Andy Boddington. For. Roger Evans.
Against.
Nick Hignett.
For.
Christian Lee.
For.
Ellie Wheeler. For. Tony Parsons.
For.
Claire Wilde.
For.
Mark Williams.
For.
And David Evans.
For.
That's 9 for and 1 against.
9 for, 1 against, that is carried to go with the officer's recommendation. Thank you. Right, we go to proposed dwelling at Green Cottage, Romney, Calvin. We've waited all this time.
Next time, so it's fair.
Yeah.
Don't be sad.
Give you a jolly, yeah.
Such a fantastic afternoon.
Whose is this? Is this Heather's?
It's all yours.
Yeah.
Mandy Starr. Oh, it's
Heather's, yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. This is an application for the approval of reserve matters, which include access, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale, relating to an outline plan commission, which was for the erection of a detached dwelling and garage. Next slide, please.
I'm sorry about that.
Yeah. Can I?
Start again, Chair.
I was just going to ask Calvin a couple of questions, that's all.
I've not finished.
Oh, sorry.
Not finished yet.
Haven't finished yet. Sorry.
We've received an additional comment from the parish council, which I will read out to you. The parish council remains opposed to this application. At outline stage, the application respected the size and design of properties detailed in our parish plan LIP. The new design is very much larger in size and scale and is considered to be harmful in appearance to this valued landscape and historical built character of this setting. We have now benefited from almost 200% on our SAMDEV allocation, and we would like to see any properties coming forward designed and built for the needs of the local community. Just one point to make about that, where they say that the new designs are much larger in size and scale. Well, at outline stage, we only had a plan similar to that. We didn't have any elevation plans or anything, so there was no indication as to what the scale of it will be, other than the indicative plan that we've got. That's just that's not the one, but it's just an indicative plan that was submitted at outline stage, and there was no condition on the outline permission as well to control the size and the scale. So yeah, moving on then, the application. Sorry, moving on. I'm moving on. Not you. The site is Ed Red. It's within the community cluster settlement of Bromlow, and as I say, the outline permission's already been established for the construction of the dwelling, which was granted in 2019. The nearest dwellings are Greenfields Cottage, which is just to the south, just off that plan, which also has the 2 outbuildings, which you can see just to the south of the site. And also there's a property, you can just see top left as well. And then we've also got a planning permission in place for a detached 2-storey dwelling on the field to the northeast as well. And details of that will be displayed later. Moving on. Yes, please. So yeah, these are the elevations plans. You can see it's a 1.5-storey dwelling, and you'll see the floor plans and the proposed materials to include brick walls with cream render, some cedar weatherboarding and grey roof tiles. Next one. So proposed garage would include the matching cedar weatherboarding with grey roof tiles to match the dwelling. The landscaping, next one. The existing hedgerow to the northeast would be retained, and there'll be a new boundary hedge proposed to the northwest of the dwelling, as you can see. And then the land to the northwest of that would form part of the landscaping proposals as well, which would be a ecological wildflower area. Next one. So the top 2 photos just show the setting of the site, and top right one you can see the hill, which is to the northeast. The bottom left is the proposed position of the dwelling. The bottom right is one of the single-storey outbuildings, which is close by. Next one. This is Greenfield Cottage, which is to the southeast. You can see the general scale of that building. Top right is the outbuildings of Greenfield Cottage, and then the bottom one is just a further back view to show the position of the dwelling on the left-hand side. And then the next one, this is the approved dwelling on the other side of the to the northeast. You can see the general layout of that. It's already had a reserved matters approval with a detached garage. The elevations on the next slide. So this is a 2-storey dwelling. It is slightly higher than the proposed one, but a smaller floor area. And the next one, and that's the approved garage as well for the adjacent property. So the main issues, the outline permission's got a requirement to submit a construction and habitat management plan. The ecologist has confirmed they're happy with that, and also the landscaping being proposed. Drainage details are required to be submitted as part of the outline, and they will be dealt with separately. There are no public objections, but the application comes to committee as the parish council has raised concerns over access, the size of the house and its impact on the AONB. In terms of the access, this will connect to the existing track you can see on that plan which is in place, which also serves Greenfield Cottage and other properties further towards the highway, and there's no objections raised from the highways team. In terms of the impact on the AONB, you can see the dwelling will be situated between an existing house to the south and one which is to be constructed to the north, and there are also outbuildings in the area as well. Officers consider that the materials are appropriate for its context. The existing hedgerow will be retained and new boundary formed. And you'll see in the committee report that the officer conclusion is that the development wouldn't be unduly prominent in the rural landscape. In terms of the other issue raised by the parish council about the size, the parish have referred to a parish plan that they have prepared. This is a material consideration, but it doesn't form part of the development plan. It does suggest that they've got a preference for 2 and 3 bedroomed homes. They would like to promote smaller houses, and that they would like a maximum floor area of 100 square metres. As I say, this doesn't form part of the development plan. The settlement policy for this particular cluster doesn't set guidelines as well about the size and scale of properties. It just says that development by infilling and conversions may be acceptable on suitable sites. So, in summary, the outline permission has established the principle of the dwelling at this site. Whilst it would be larger than is desired by the parish council, it would not be unduly prominent and does not conflict with the adopted settlement policies for the area, and therefore it's recommended that reserved matters approval is granted.
Thank you, Calvin. Councillor Wilder, please.
Yeah, I was going to say really, it's a shame on 2 counts. The one is that there wasn't a size limit put on it when outline permission was granted. And the other is actually that we've had nobody come to speak about it.
Yeah.
So, you know, on that basis, I'm quite happy to move the recommendation, really, I think. Because there's nothing we can do about it. I don't think, anyway.
Okay, I'll second that.
Yeah.
Take the vote.
Okay, let's take the vote. If you indicate with your voting for or against the proposal to accept the recommendation. Caroline Bagnall?
For.
Andy Boddington?
For.
Roger Evans?
For.
Nick Hicknick?
For.
Christian Lee?
For.
Hilary Luff? For. Nigel Lumby?
For.
Tony Parsons?
For.
Claire Wild?
For.
Mark Williams?
For.
And David Evans?
For.
That's unanimous.
Lovely, thank you. Good. Right, we're going to schedule appeals number 10. Is that just for noting?
It is really, I don't know whether Calvin, you had any.
I'm happy to go through any that members want. I'm happy to go through any that members want to. I think the only one that stuck out for me was the one at Inage Lane for the erection of 4 dwellings, which was within the grounds of the approved retirement complex at Bridge North. And that appeal was dismissed, and the inspector remarked that there will be harm to the living conditions of the retirement complex. And I think that just gives weight to our policies that although it's a retirement complex, there's still an expectation that appropriate means of open space are provided for residents.
Kelvin, can I just ask, does that mean then that the open space will have to be provided for?
Yeah, it still forms part of it.
So they can't look to develop that land in the future?
Not as part of that application, no. Whether they come forward again, I don't know.
Okay.
Thank
Right.
you.
Item 11 is date of the next meeting. That will be on Tuesday, 18th of October. I'd just like to thank everybody for attending. Thank the officers for all their hard work and input. And thank you for the substitutes for standing in. And wish you all a safe journey home. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, I would say.